one of the biggest things that the Pearl brings is simplicity. Like, I feel like in business, we get so caught up in the high cash months and $1 million movement and this and a brand shoot and all these shiny material things. And the Pearl, no matter what gene key you have, no matter what line, it always comes back to being present and realizing like the abundance right in front of your face right now. And it's such a difficult pill to swallow. And so I just love the Pearl because it really humbles us to sit down and check ourselves and really look at, okay, what does it actually mean to be of service?
You're listening to Sensitive, Spiritual, and Successful, the podcast where we uncover ways to connect you back to your soul self and get you unstuck so that you can live out your full potential. I'm Jasmine Lynn, a former psychotherapist turned human design soul guide and EFT tapping success coach, and I'm here to show you how to love yourself through all your levels of growth. I know you're here because you have an impact you want to make in this world and you have a light to share, and I'm here to guide you through that journey because you deserve soul-aligned success. Before we get into the episode, I just wanted to let you know that the waitlist for the Ultimate Human Design Summit is now open, and I would totally join the waitlist because I'm going to be sending out an email to everyone who's on it. I'm going to be emailing them a special bonus, so you don't want to miss out on that. The Human Design Summit is totally free. It's a 3-day virtual event with 48-hour replays because I know you're busy, and actually I had so many people from around the world last year that 48 hours just seemed more fair so that everyone can catch the presentations. There's going to be 18 speakers. The speakers are going to help you break down your human design chart so that you can uncover your gifts, your talents, any shadows that you may want to work through in order to step into your authentic self, how to attract your ideal client, messaging through human design, like through content. There's so many great topics, and I know that you won't want to miss it, especially if you're a heart-centered coach, practitioner, healer, creative. Definitely jump in. www.theultimatehumandesignsummit.com is where you can find that, or in the show notes. And I can't wait to see you there. Okay, let's get into it.
Hi, everyone. I have Kehla here, and we are going to jump right into this amazing episode. She's going to share her genius with us. Kehla, thanks for being here.
I'm so excited to come back for a second interview with you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. And everyone, she's going to be back at the Ultimate Human Design Summit in February. So I know you're going to be really excited for it. After this episode, you hear this episode, you're going to be like, okay, I got to listen in to what she has to share. So let's jump right in. We won't waste any time. Kehla, question for you. What are the gene keys and why did you start using them as a strategic and energetic tool in your business?
I love this. I'm so excited that we get to talk about the gene keys today because it's just married so well with human design and the way I use it in business. So we obviously know human design, right? And the gene keys have shared components with human design. They were created by Richard Rudd, who worked with Ra. And the gene keys are focused on, we have astrology and we have the I Ching system. So let's say the 64 gates inside of the human design chart are the 64 archetypes that come from the I Ching system that you find inside of the gene keys. So the gene keys, when you look them up the same way that you would your human design chart. You can go to the Gene Keys website and look it up for free, which is awesome. And when you look it up, you're going to see a bunch of circles, some lines, a lot of numbers and words, and you're going to be like, what the fuck is this? Kind of like the whole thing with looking up your human design chart. So when you look up your gene keys, what you're going to see is you're going to see, like I said, these circles and lines and numbers and all the things. But what I want to point out is that there's actually 3 sequences inside of the gene keys. When you look at the full thing, it's known as the golden path. So the first sequence is the activation sequence. This is like what activates you and how you create core stability in your life, and I say in your business. Then we have the Venus sequence, which is red, and this is focused on unconditional love and even your relationships, and I say your relationships to business and your clients. And then the Pearl sequence, which is blue, is focused on prosperity and being of service. So I really dive into this with entrepreneurs in terms of how to be of service through their business. So the gene keys, I use them as, I feel like human design is really great for a structural approach to business. Like, I'm this type, I have this strategy, this defined center, undefined center, my profile, and you figure out how to take action, even though the studies obviously from Ra also say that, following your strategy and authority is a very feminine approach, energetically speaking. I find that the gene keys are very feminine because the way that you approach the gene keys, you're not trying to figure them out like, oh, I have this, this, and this, like in human design. It's very contemplative. So what that means is that when you and we'll dive into examples today. I'm just giving everyone the overview. When you dive into a gene key, what you want to do is have the gene keys approach, which is being contemplative, being inquiring about what the energy means, being patient and being gentle with yourself, and really observing how this shows up in your life. So I love to take this approach with my clients because when they observe how their gene keys show up for them in their life and business, it allows them to take responsibility, and that ultimately shifts the action that they take in business, and that's where the strategy comes in.
I love that. So taking that information and then actually doing something about it. So same idea though with the deconditioning, because when you're contemplating on things, you're bringing more awareness to how, these themes are showing up in your life and business. And then like maybe rewriting the stories or maybe how you thought about yourself in the past and then aligning to that. So same kind of idea, you would say?
Yeah, very similar idea. And I love that you brought up the deconditioning thing because in human design, it's pretty straightforward where it's like you're in alignment or out of alignment. Like it's a bit binary where I find with the gene keys, because every gene key has what we call three different frequencies. There's a shadow, there's a gift, and there's a city. So the shadow is obviously when you're not in alignment or it's there to give you feedback. We're not here to shame the shadows or anything. We're here to integrate them, but it's like pieces of feedback. And the gift is like getting curious and creating that shift, right? So once you shift the way that something occurs to you, the way that you're taking action, the way that you're speaking about it, you move into the gift energy. And then the highest frequency and expression is the city. So there is more of a process and transition with the gene, like a gene key. Whereas I feel like human design is different because it's like, okay, strategy, authority, in alignment, out of alignment, just follow your strategy. Here's your authority. So it's a bit rigid, where I really love the gene keys because it brings more nuance to the situation.
Yes. Okay. That's awesome. And I know you are the nuance queen and being able to like find those little threads within themes and patterns and stuff. Okay. So that's a little bit around the difference between gene keys and human design. So I'm glad you covered that as well. And so today we'll break down the pearl sequence because, a lot of people probably are wondering about prosperity, and a lot of entrepreneurs, people who are interested in becoming coaches, practitioners are probably listening to this. So, what is the pearl sequence? Well, you kind of covered that a little bit, but what is the misconception people have about using their pearl sequence in business?
Yeah, I love using the pearl sequence because when you look at the teachings from Richard, like he really talks about the pearl sequence being about prosperity. And it's funny because when I dove into the pearl sequence almost, yeah, over 2 years ago now, I was in a state of my business of, "Oh, I want to make more money. I'm going to dive into how I can create more prosperity." And I had this mindset around money. And what I really loved about the pearl sequence is that the intention is you being connected to your communities, being of service, and how prosperity really comes from being present with the work that you're doing and also looking at what's currently in your life right now. So it just really eliminates the greed and the focus on self gratification in your business. Like it's really about how are you being of service. So when we look at the pearl sequence, it's at the top of the golden path in the entire three gene key sequences that I mentioned earlier. And it starts with we have 4 spheres. So there's the vocation in the bottom left, we've got the culture in the bottom right. Your brand is in the top point, and in the middle, we have the pearl. So the journey starts at the vocation, and then we'll dive into the other spheres. But I'm just curious, do you want me to just get into it? I have your gene keys up in front of me right now, but if you have another question you want to ask me before I get into it, let me
Yeah.
know.
Let's see if I have another question or we can just get into it. Yeah. So yeah, let's just dive in.
I have in front of me right now Jazz's Gene Keys, and I'm going to do a reading on this because I think it's just going to paint the picture for people to be able to see like how this can show up for you in your business. So your vocation is the unconscious Mars planet in astrology, and it's going to be the same planet that you have in human design because that's where the crossover is, right? So your vocation is really your greatest core wound in terms of when you really sit with this and you alchemize that experience in your business becomes your biggest talent that you get to share with others. So you have the 56th in here. And the shadow is distraction. We have enrichment and intoxication. So the way that I would describe this is you're really here to, through your work, you help people become present to really share their stories and really be able to create this connection with others through their work. And I love that I'm going to like rope in human design just because I can't help myself. You have an undefined G center. And so I love that this really is going to help you amplify that experience with the people that you work with. And I think a prime example, obviously, is you having the ultimate human design summit, like the way that you create this experience where people can enrich others with their wisdom and create this intoxication of like, oh my God, we love human design. This is a great experience for us. Like we're using this as a tool in our business. So the two lines, so 56.2, marketing, it's ties into the similar flavors as the six lines in human design, where it's like it's about partnership, it's about connection, right? So marketing is like sharing. So it's like sharing this this storytelling experience with others. So I'm curious
Mhm.
if that resonates with you.
Yeah, I feel like, well, that example of the Human Design Summit, I didn't even think of that. But why I'm drawn to the people that I asked to be their speakers is because of their stories and how they share their gifts and then bringing everybody together. I just think everybody needs to learn from, the people that I bring together. I'm like, yeah, more people need to know about their work and their stories and how they got here. And even in the first Human Design Summit that we ran, I wanted to interview all the speakers, right? Because this is your second time here. I wanted to hear their stories. I wanted to share their stories of how they used human design and how they, changed their life following their passions and stuff. So that like really lights me up.
That's awesome. And here's the funny thing. So, because we're going to rope this back into prosperity, those conversations are creating prosperity because it's creating more connection. Like you're giving the opportunity for people to come onto your podcast and to come into the summit and share their story. Like the prosperity is these people are going to get their work farther out into the world. They're going to make a bigger impact. So that's literally being of service. So that's what it's not about, oh, sign more clients, make more money. Like, sure, that's a consequence, but you have to connect with the people and build a relationship with them first.
Absolutely. And that's what I felt like I did. Like I always say in my past episodes that I always felt like a nobody. Like I loved human design. I loved talking about it with like people, anyone who would listen, but to actually find my right place in, the community, I really feel like I've found the pieces and put it together and like being able to connect with you. Like I've followed you in your work for a long time and a lot of the other speakers that I had. And just to be able to connect and actually build that relationship, I'm like, yeah, this feels so right. I'm so glad I'm here now.
Oh, I love it. Oh, that's so good. See, I just love how you get into the weeds and you're like, wow, like it's the wisdom is already there. It's not like I'm proving anything. It's what you're already doing in your business, which is beautiful. Okay, so we go from the vocation through the pathway of initiative. I'm not going to get into the pathways today just because it's a lot, but we'll talk about the spheres and the gene keys. So then we move into the culture sphere. So the culture sphere, I love this sphere so much because it's like the culture that you create within your business. This is where you connect with your fractal line, like-minded souls. And I say that this is how you create the ambience of the spaces that you hold with the people that come to work with you. So for example, you have 48.1. So the 48, we have the shadow of inadequacy, resourcefulness, and wisdom. And it's funny, I have the 40th gene key in a different sphere, and it's like I can really relate to this. And it's like the ambience that you create is like bringing people together who feel inadequate. They feel like they're not good enough. What they're doing isn't landing. It's not connecting. And you show them how to be resourceful so that they can share their wisdom. And the one line of individual is like really showing them individually, but then also even your own experience of, your relationship to yourself is like doing individual work, but that's like the catalyst and the foundation of how you move being of service forward through your business. So I'm curious how that lands for you.
So another part of my business is like, so I'm writing the book, Tap and Align to Your Human Design, and it's all about aligning to your human design, deconditioning, and like looking at your limiting beliefs so that you can unlock your full potential. And I feel like when you talk about, I know what the feeling of inadequacy feels like, like not feeling good enough. I'm sure you know that gate 48 is just like, "Ah, I don't know enough. I need to know more." People always think I'm a one line because like I can gather a lot of information and like try and feel like I know enough. But anyway, so part of my coaching moving forward after the book is to help people find their like release their limiting beliefs so that they can step into their potential, share their wisdom, and like see that they are not as stuck as they need to be.
Yes. Oh my God. I'm laughing too because I just looked and you have 48 in the pearl as well. So the way that and it's actually, so I'm going to dive into this one next. So the pearl is specifically your experience of prosperity, and it's like how you create prosperity. So for example, what you literally said also ties into the pearl because it's like you're there to show people how you are prosperous already in who you are. Like it's just a matter of shifting these perspectives or this energetic experience or conversation that you're having about yourself so that you can share your wisdom. And so I love this because the fifth line of power is really using your voice and showing up powerfully and like giving these resources to others, like connecting on a societal level with, the people that you're working with. And I also love that because you are a sacral being, that you're really going to be able to use that voice, that defined throat center, to like take that energy and share your wisdom. So it's just like using that 48, like, showing people that their inadequacies are actually, like, what make them unique is really gonna help them tap into their prosperity and, like, also, like, for yourself as well.
Yeah, I feel like that is my right place in the world, like my background being in psychotherapy and like the same patterns happening when I was in the therapy chair where people were wanting to just be their authentic self and like I could share my wisdom one on one. I think a lot of my inner work was being able to share it on a greater platform. So writing this book and sharing it with the world. I'm a 5 line too. I'm a 3-5. So, like, there was a lot of fear of like, I'll just keep it one to one, share my wisdom one to one with clients. And now I feel like doing the work, it's like, of course, I, got this book publishing deal so I can share my wisdom with the world. And of course, I've been working on myself to have a podcast and share what I know with people because I feel like, yeah, I do know a lot. It's just that fear of I'm not good enough. No one wants to hear what I have to say, right? Well, what wisdom? I don't have any wisdom, but I have years of, experience and schooling and all this stuff. So I'm like, okay, now's the time I need to do this.
Yes. Oh my gosh, this is so good, so good. And then, okay, so I'll dive into the last sphere. So it's known as the brand sphere, also known as the life's work and the activation sequence. So your brand is your conscious sun. It's at the peak of the pearl sequence when you're looking at it, the top sphere. And your brand is really your truth. Like, what is it that you're here to share with the world? And it's really beautiful because when I see the 37th in here, point three, is like that shadow of weakness, equality, and tenderness. Like this is really the energy of, again, it ties into the inadequacy, I feel like. So you've got like inadequacy twice, and then you've got weakness. And it's like you're only as strong as your weakest link. So then what you need to do is like strengthen the weakest link so that you can increase the overall strength. And I feel like that's where equality and tenderness come in. So it's like closing the gaps around, okay, you think you're not good enough, you think you're inadequate, you think your story isn't enough. Let's close those gaps and actually create prosperity from this. Like share your story, share your impact, share your work. And so the three line being the changer, being the one who's experimenting and interacting, is like, yeah, there's going to be trial and error with figuring out how to close that gap for your weakest link, but you're going to know everything that doesn't work and you're going to find out what does. So that's really what comes through in terms of your brand. Like you can look at like, how can I share my story? Like what's my story of where I've experienced weakness, and how did I create that balance and that harmony through equality, and then, the tenderness that it took to move through that. Especially with the three line, I feel like there's just so much shame around the failure or the trial and error, or even just like you do something and you fail, and it's such an immediate lesson where it's like, "Oh my god, why didn't I just do it like this?" Like, immediately after, like, it's, like, painstakingly obvious why it didn't work, and you're like, "Oh my god." But you have to embrace that, like, that's where the tenderness comes in.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that. And like, yeah, being a third line, obviously, where that point three comes from. Yeah. It's like as soon as somebody says, don't do it this way, I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna try it." It's like, obviously I shouldn't have done that. But I feel like that's such a third line silly thing to do because you're like, "You're gonna tell me not to do it?" I just wanna find out myself.
I'm just laughing. I just wanna share this one story because I think it's
Yeah.
such a three-line thing. So Guillaume and I, my fiance, we were at this spa thing a couple weeks ago, and it's like a bunch of different sauna rooms, and there's like a cold plunge pool and all these things. And so we're in this sauna. It's like this eucalyptus sauna. It's just him and I. And I think I left to like cool down. I came back in, and he's standing there with the wooden spoon ladle in his hand, and he's like taking like massive scoops of water and putting it on the rocks. And I'm looking at him like, what the fuck are you doing? And he looks at me and he's like, "Oh, I just wanna see how hot it's gonna get." And I looked at him and I said, "That's some three-line bullshit." And literally a second later, the heat hit us so hard, he, like, grabbed his ears and started squealing. He's like, "Ow, ow, ow," and, like, ran out of the room. And I just stood there, like, sweating bullets, but I was literally pissing my bathing suit laughing because I thought that was so obvious. Like, obviously, if you're gonna put a liter of water on sauna rocks with eucalyptus, which already, like, burns your
Correct.
eyes when right? And it was just such an iconic third line moment, and I was like, I could have told him 100 times not to do it, and he just had to do it. It was so funny. I was like, "This is" it just gives grace understanding human design and, like, he just had to do it, like, I understand.
Right? You just it's the experience, right?
Yeah.
So I definitely feel that.
Oh, so funny.
That's so good. I love all of that. Thank you for sharing those examples because I feel like I'm definitely working towards that and building, you know, past me maybe years ago would have like died for this information, right? And then it's just like struggling to like figure it out. But when you find your alignment and finding like really what feels true for you, it's like natural that you just like you jump into this and you're like, yes, that is my truth right there.
Totally.
Yeah. So with the Pearl Sphere, what role does it play in guiding entrepreneurs to embrace simplicity and focus on high value activities that align with their core purpose?
Yeah, I love this question because one of the biggest things that the Pearl brings is simplicity. Like, I feel like in business, we get so caught up in the high cash months and $1 million movement and this and a brand shoot and all these shiny material things. And the Pearl, no matter what gene key you have, no matter what line, it always comes back to being present and realizing like the abundance right in front of your face right now. And it's such a difficult pill to swallow. Like, let's say if you are not in a space in your business where you feel satisfied and you're really frustrated and you do want to increase your impact and your income and more clients and be known for your work. And but the thing is that if you can really just slow down and realize that there's wisdom right there. And it's the reaching and like, when is this gonna happen? Like, when? It's not the how. Like, how you are of service is literally through what it is that you're already doing. But people get so caught up in the when. And so I just love the Pearl because it really humbles us to sit down and check ourselves and really look at, okay, what does it actually mean to be of service? Like, let's say I think it was this year, 2024, that was the first summit that you ever hosted, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like you were so willing to go in there and like three line that shit. And that was honestly the best summit that I was on the entire year in terms of like being a speaker. Yeah. But it's like you were so focused on, I don't know how to do X, Y, and Z. Let me be resourceful. I'm gonna learn. And here we're gonna share this wisdom. And it was just so easy. And it was nothing, I mean, it was big and shiny, but it wasn't like super big and shiny aggressively. It was so perfect the way that it was, right? And I think that that's really important. So that's where the simplicity comes in. It's just like humbling us to realize, like, chasing the big things. It's like, it's actually just right in front of you. Like, you just have to build on to the next.
Yeah. And I think that speaks to like, so now that I'm running my second one, so the first one, figuring it out really aligned with like, I love doing it. And it's like, okay, now what have I learned from that? And I want to keep the core concepts of, why I'm doing it, but it will be bigger and I have new speakers and it's going to reach more people around the world. So it's like, yeah, maybe that's a generator thing too, where it's like, just keep
Yeah.
go right? Like build that mastery one step at a time. And I think when you said it's like, when is it going to happen? We get so attached to when is it going to happen? But when I look at my experience, it's like, I made that happen. Maybe, it could be obviously 10 times bigger. It could have like 40 speakers, whatever. When is this going to happen? It's like, I made it happen. And I have all that information to build the next one and tweak it here and there and make it even better.
I think what you're saying is really just falling in love with refinement, which is huge. Like that's such a huge piece and component to the work that I do with clients where it's like fall in love with the process of refining because the how is your responsibility. I know in manifestation, it's like, oh, the how is not your responsibility, but it's like, well, it is because how you, let's say, bring a summit to life is you ask the people, hey, do you want to come on? You have to set up the payments, the registration. There's the how is the doing. That is our responsibility. But it's the when. People don't realize you're actually attached to the when, and then you try to manipulate the how to get the when, but the how is literally just being of service. That's what it is.
Oh, that is so good. Yeah. I feel like people need to like listen to that again because that is so, so true. It's like action is a large part of building it. And like you said, I love how you connected the how with the action because you have to keep building on the how am I going to make this happen? Well, you're going to try, and then it might lead to something else, and something else might unfold. And that's like the magic of it all. But I can understand when someone's frustrated with when is it going to happen? That whole part seems like really freaking annoying. Like you're like, oh my God, why do I have to do all this?
Totally. But
Yeah.
then the funny thing is when you look at the how, like let's say for example, you're launching something, right? And it's like you've done the post, you've got the email sequences, you've talked about the thing, you've spent thousands of dollars refining your messaging, being inside programs, and then you go and you launch, and maybe you get less signups than expected. And it's like, what the fuck? When am I going to have this 10, 20, 30, 40K launch? I don't get it. But it's like, well, if you actually look at the how, what can you refine in the how? Oh, maybe you only gave like a week for a launch and you needed to give more time. How long have you been talking about this thing that you were selling? Did you actually create any opportunities to do like an Instagram live series or sell in your stories or do like a launch vehicle with the masterclass? Like there's always the how, but then if you notice everything I said is actually just being of service because you're just sharing more with your people and building more trust. That's
Yeah.
what it comes down to.
Yes. And I feel like you model that so, so well. And I know in my own experience too, like jumping into from like therapy to coaching and like having to write these emails and stuff. And I can see where, it's I know what I want to have happen, but am I even doing the things to make that happen? I
Yes.
sent one email. Okay. No one's signing up. Well, no shit. Okay. Like, let's be real. And I can really look at that for myself and be like, okay, what can I do to make this better? And it's me taking responsibility with what I'm doing or not
Yes.
doing. Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. That's so funny. Okay. So, how does the vocation sphere support entrepreneurs in recognizing and nurturing their unique skills to serve their ideal clients more effectively?
Yes. I love this question. And I think that this is such an important sphere because it really shows you like your biggest trigger. And I think that because it's the unconscious Mars and this energetic imprinting was imprinted like when we were inside of the womb of our mother, there's a lot there for us to unpack. And I think I'll speak to my vocation just because I think it's been a catalyst in my entrepreneurial journey. So I have the 34th gene key and the shadow is force and we have strength and majesty. And when I look back at my entrepreneurial journey, so I've been in business, I'm about to start my sixth year in 2025. And it's like the last 4 or 5 years, I can see where I was forcing myself. I can see where I was trying to force myself to make things work. I was stubborn. I was just stuck in it. And that was really hard. And it was like, I was just a victim. Like that's usually when we're really in the shadows of our gene keys, like we're in a victim state. And so for me, I kept forcing and forcing and forcing, but then the gift of strength really because the 34th gene key is in the sacral and it's connecting to the throat, it's connecting to the G center, it's connecting to the spleen, like there's a lot of energy there. And so the 34th is really just what is it that lights you up? Like what are you responding to? And like how can you have the strength to respond to the correct things for you? And so I really started to shift that conversation and that energy over the last couple of years and actually look at, wow, Kayla, look at how you specifically speak to entrepreneurs and not forcing things in their business and being able to respond to the correct things through the embodiment of their human design and gene keys. Like I actually see my prosperity coming through in terms of how I'm designed to be of service. Like it's right there. Like the people who I can see from like 10,000 miles away when somebody's forcing something. it's so obvious to me and I can help them through that. So it's like you've lived this vocation in so many different ways. Like I've lived it with money, I've lived it in relationship, I've lived it with, my relationship and connection to my body and fitness and health. The force is showing up for me everywhere. It's not just in business, but that theme of needing to force things has been prevalent. And so navigating that through strength and looking at majesty. And I always give the metaphor for majesty because it's like queen energy. Like this is kind of funny, but you think about a queen sitting on her throne in a room, like she doesn't have to force anything. She can just command a room. And it's like, what does it look like in your business if you're not forcing things and you're operating in a way that you have strength and you command the room of your business? What does that even look like? And that's just a very interesting way to see it. So that's how I think that you can leverage that vocation sphere with more depth, is looking at that's a really big component of the work that you do with your clients and how you're of service to them.
Mhm. I love that. Thank you for giving your example because I think that helps like people understand how to use it in their own when they go and reflect on their vocation sphere. How does the brand sphere, so the top one that you talked about, help entrepreneurs cultivate a personal brand that resonates deeply with their audience that, will foster trust and loyalty and things like that?
Yeah. So again, I'm going to use my gene. We talked a bit about your gene keys, but I'm going to share from my own experience because I'm a 6'2" sacral generator and I can't help but like six line my way through. Here's what I did and blah, blah, blah. So I have the 36th in my brand sphere and it's also in my Mercury, which is the planet of communication. So I feel like it really comes through a lot for me because I talk about the 36 a lot, like undertones and also blatantly. But the shadow is turbulence. And then we have the gift of humanity and compassion. And so for me, if you look at my Instagram feed and a lot of my posts, like I talk about humanity a lot. Like I call out the shiny, materialistic bullshit in the industry, in the coaching industry. And it's like, okay, you want to look good and hit and talk about money all the time and $1 million movements and all of that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's like, I don't ever see enough of people's humanity when they are speaking like that. It's like, I want to hear your story of how you navigated turbulence, not that you just kept going and going and going and made more money and got bigger in the industry and whatever. Like what is your stories of where you really got hit in the face with something so challenging and you can share that and be vulnerable. Like I'm like constantly looking for that. I'm constantly calling it out and I'm constantly bringing it into, my page spaces. Like, I'm hosting the Edge Mastermind. This is an evergreen container that I have. And the other day, the ladies and I inside there, we started talking about debt. We started talking about consolidating debt. We started talking about shame around money. We started talking about getting, some of the gals got part-time jobs as they're growing their business. And I'm like, your fucking humanity is right there. Like, this is how it should be. Like, this is the reality of being an entrepreneur. It's not just shiny bells and whistles all the time. And so for me, I really look at, because I'm a sixth line, I role model this intentionally and I look at how can I embody this myself, call it out and like name it. Because the funny thing is the other nuance, obviously I'm going to get into this. The 36 is in the emotional solar plexus. There's like a lot of depth and emotionality to that gene key. And it's also in a manifested channel. So there's even though I'm a generator and I have a completely open throat center, the way that I talk about the 36, how it shows up in my work is very much from this initiating and informing energy. It's like, I'm going to tell you how it is.
Mhm.
This is how it is. And so I think that those components of, yeah, I just talked about the gene key. Like, let's say you're contemplating this for yourself, but look at the center that it's in, look at the type of channel that it's in, and see how you can embody that and share that in your free content, your paid content, because it strengthens your message and allows you to stand out further in your industry.
Mm. Yes, I think my Mercury 36 is in my Mercury as well. So I resonate with speaking about the humanity part. I feel like I stay in my head about it. I can see it, I can call it out. And I'm like, that's not how it really is, guys. That's not it. And so when you share your voice and resonating with your content and how you call that out, I'm like, yes, like Kayla knows what's up. And I think a lot of us do. A lot of us can see it. It was just like we don't say anything or we don't know how to put words to it, but you are able to do that. So thank you. In what ways does the culture sphere offer guidance on building meaningful connections and a support network that reinforces, the person's vision, the entrepreneur's vision?
Yes. Okay. Again, I have the 52 in the culture sphere, and I mentioned earlier that this is like the ambience that you bring inside of the containers is also like the like-minded people that you connect with. And so the 52, we have the shadow of stress, and then we have restraint and stillness. So what I've noticed, and this is I just gave the example of how inside the Edge Mastermind we were talking about money recently, and some of the gals were just like, "Yeah, I literally woke up in the middle of the night and was like so stressed because this is my financial situation that I'm navigating right now." And so I noticed that the women come in, especially with their business, they're like, I want to get my business out there and I'm stressed because I'm trying to do X, Y, and Z. And they're still working, 9 to 5, or they're just navigating a lot in life. Like things happen in life. And so what I notice is with the 52, because it's in the root center, there's a lot of pressure. Like there's this pressure of like needing to make shit happen because that's like, natural pressure of the root center. And so when we're stressed, we try to do more. Like it's kind of a paradox. We're like stressed out and we don't try to do less. We do more to try and alleviate the stress. So what I do when I think about bringing this into the ambience of my page spaces or just any conversation, any experience is really looking at, okay, you're stressed. Like, where can you actually alleviate the pressure? Like, let's be realistic about your timeline. We talked about a couple minutes ago about the how and the when, and it's like, what is that going to look like? How can you restrain yourself from this additional pressure that you're putting on yourself or that you're assuming and comparing from the coaching industry? And what is it going to look like to come to that place of stillness and to trust your own timing? And so this is like an ongoing conversation that I have inside of my paid containers. And I just really notice that it's extremely supportive for these women. And the other thing is too, is I have the third line in the culture sphere and that's known as unit, but it also, the line expressions, this is like a side plug for everyone. The line expressions, and I want everyone to look at this with nuance, can show you like how big of spaces you're designed to operate in. And for me, the third line is like, I do really well in groups of like 3 to 15. So right now I have about 10 women inside the mastermind and it's like, we're in this small community and looking at, okay, how can we alchemize stress into having this restraint for like your own timing and having that stillness in the process. And it's just like this beautiful community of us collaborating and connecting and the interaction of the third line with one another. So that's a very specific example, but also nuanced at the same time in terms of how the culture sphere has shown up for me in terms of being of service.
Okay, so that line, so the yours is a 3, mine is a 48.1.
Yeah.
That show what, like, how you the environments, I guess, that you best work in, like, by myself?
So individual, but I also think it's like supporting people with their individual experience. It doesn't mean that you're like working alone, but it's like supporting them with their individual experience. Where 2 is like partnership. So it's like you do really well in partnership. 3 is unit. So it's like 3 to 15s. 4 is I think is network.
Yeah.
And then we have 5 is society. And then we have 6, which is system. So there's like nuances for each thing. But yeah, actually, you know what I'll do is in the show notes, we can add, I have a resource on all the lines. So if people are like, I want to know the lines. I have this resource is like all the lines for human design, gene keys of every sphere in all 3 sequences. So we'll throw that in the show notes so that if people want to go down that rabbit hole. And the other thing that I didn't say that I think is really interesting with the culture sphere is that the shadow blocks prosperity in your life. So for me, when I look at I have the shadow of stress. And I'm like, Kayla, you're stressed. I'm like, okay, well, no fucking wonder I don't feel abundant or I'm not experiencing X, Y, and Z in my relationship with money, my business, my health, and so on. And so it allows me to sit with myself and look at like, what can I be responsible for? Like, what is actually causing me stress right now? Rather than being a victim to it, it's like, what is actually causing me stress right now? Like, what is it that I can resolve through this so that I can create prosperity of like alleviating that pressure from myself. So that's a really interesting point to contemplate with your culture sphere is like that shadow will block your experience of prosperity. It's not just money, but it's like all the things that I just said, all areas of life.
Oh, that is so good, and yeah, looking at my chart here that you have up, inadequacy, like, really working on that, and that honestly, that's probably why I have tailored my work the way it is and writing the book that it is, like, all the limiting beliefs, because that's, like, feeling inadequate. Where in all the ways have you felt inadequate, right? Like, what are all your limiting beliefs that are stopping you from really showing up? So I can kinda see how I've, like, weaved that into my work and making it way more specific in terms of, like, more in a coaching role. And I think with my 5 line, being able to, like, define what I do so that people know what the expectations are there. I've set them out. This is what we're working on. and then like going from there. So thank you. I love that. I love all the examples that you have. And as you reflect, I'm looking at my chart here and I'm reflecting and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense for me. So everybody just grab your chart and start this, listen to this episode and then you can start reflecting as well. And yeah, we'll link that freebie there. Okay, so what have you learned about being authentic in life and business? I feel like I can't wait to hear your answer.
Yeah, I think it it comes back to humanity. That's why I'm laughing. I think that something that I've always worked on from the beginning of, I mean, I've been an entrepreneur now for like 8 years and I've been in my business for almost six. And I think that the biggest thing I've learned is transparency and honesty are the keys to authenticity. And I think that authenticity, I've shared over the last several years before I really got the ball rolling in the last year. Like I was applying for 9 to 5s, like between, I think it was 2021 to end of 2022. I applied to like 47 jobs, like in person, online. I was struggling in my business. I had like my debt was like getting out of control and I didn't hide that. And it's not that everyone needs to share everything online, like you don't, but it just for me, I just knew how to share it in a way where I was like, here's the real shit happening as an entrepreneur, like not somebody who scaled quickly. Like this is the reality. This is how I'm navigating it. And what's really crazy is that I think that I never I never like I really didn't feel like I had my shit together until like the last year. So it's like the first 4 years of my business was just I was just sharing, being real. This is my journey, but I think that it cultivated a lot of trust, and that's something that you can't buy. And this is something that in the coaching industry right now, there is a trust deficiency because there has been a lot of experiences where people were promised overinflated promises, things were underdelivered. And so I really feel that because I've been so honest and authentic in my journey the entire way through, the humanity is shining. People relate to me and they trust me and they come in and they're not trying to prove anything. If they are, I call it out and we get back to that state of like neutrality and like you being authentic with yourself.
Yeah, I loved all of that and what you stand for and just like speaking the truth and building that trust because I think that's what drew me in to following you to begin with because I was online, I was kind of scoping it out like, when to drop the whole therapy thing and like how do I get into this online field and I feel like you were already that role model of like, this is hard, this is the mindset shift you need to make. This is going to pop up and I think we all can fall prey to the shiny stuff that you see online, all those Facebook ads, Instagram ads of like, do this and you'll get that. And I always had a hard time with when people would promise certain things. I'm like, there's no way. And I think that's my skepticism too, because in therapy, the lens that I look through, it's like you can't promise anything. I can't promise that you're gonna get better. It's like it's a relationship. And so when people would be promising like you'll do this or you'll have this much money, and I'm like, that's scary. Like I feel
Yeah, no.
like unethical.
Yeah, I think it's so funny because it's like what I've really noticed in myself in the last year is like let's see the big names in the industry, they're loud. That's why people hear them. That's why they're being seen. They're really fucking loud. And I can see this pattern, like they're all going left. And I'm like, well, I'm just gonna go right. Like I'm not gonna do that. And here's the thing. I could very easily go online and say, I can help you scale your business to 6 figures a year. I can help you hit 10K. I could totally fucking do that. And I don't sell it. I don't because I want people, and this is where they go left, I go right, is I want people to fall in love with the process of refining. I want to sell people on the refinement and to have them be obsessed and curious about the how.
Mhm.
And also just realizing that when you go after the big shiny things, those are the when. Because the fact is, when you refine and you do the how, what happens is you will get to the when.
Yes.
So that's why I go left and everyone's going right. Like, it's just that's my mentality about it.
Yeah, no, and I love that speaks to me personally too, because the whole refinement thing and falling in love with the process, that's what I had to learn myself. But also the work that I do is like I say in my podcast intro, it's like helping you learn to love yourself through all your levels of growth. So I focus on more of like the emotional stuff and like clearing all those blocks. But it's not like I'm going to promise this big thing. It's like what I really care about is that you love yourself, that you build your self-worth what in our work together, that you build that confidence and that no matter what life throws you or business throws you, you actually have that inner core strengthened so that you can keep walking all those stories that have put you down in the past. I want to help you clear that, heal those things so you can show up and shine. Like
Yeah.
that's my thing. So it's like the same like your work and then my work, it's like really boils down to like, yeah, the process and helping build people from the inside, not just the
Totally.
outside stuff, the external stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Yep.
it's a very generator thing. Like you mentioned it earlier, just this desire to master like kind of one thing at a time. And like you're an emotional generator, I'm a signal generator, but it's still very true. Like I'm like a slow and steady, focused kind of person. And it makes me laugh because let's say again with my fiance, 6'3" splenic projector, undefined G center. And when we compare like our athletic pursuits. He loves all the things like trail running and hockey and golf and swimming and whatever. And me, I'm like, okay, running, yes, walking, CrossFit, touch rugby. And I did those things for a very long time. And so it's like, Guillaume has this amazing background as an athlete. And then for me, it's like, well, in university, because I was so focused on rugby, I went to the University Olympics and won a bronze medal with the team. And then, in 2024, went to the Touch Rugby World Cup with Team Canada and like made history there because it's like this mastery and it's the love of falling in love with the process. And so I think that that's just we're also just being generators.
Yeah.
By doing that, which is so funny. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's so true. And I think the thing with generators is that the underlying theme is sustainability.
Yes.
How do we help people be more sustainable in business, sustainable in life, like building those tools and skills to be able to, continue forward and have that emotion regulation. And as I was thinking that with my brand in the 37, that's like the emotional solar plexus. I have it defined. That's like, I feel like I'm really into like the emotion regulation and how to like clear, emotional charges related to stories that you've held on to. I feel like that's like my jam. And I use tapping, like the book is about using EFT tapping to help you decondition. So I feel like that's really like, let me help you work through your emotions about things.
Yes. 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 And you know what's interesting actually if we kind of go in the rabbit hole. So that's the 3740 in human design. And it's like there's like this community, there's like a paradox of the community aspect, but aloneness. And it's, wanting to be able to process those emotions, but then having this drive and desire of like, what's your commitment and your integrity with yourself from the heart center. So it's just, I love all the nuances and like get into the weeds of it. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, and like just having this conversation, it's so funny to have my chart out and as you're speaking, like connect those dots even deeper is really, really cool. So why do you think it is so hard for a lot of entrepreneurs to actually embrace their true selves and show up in that way?
I think it's because we're impatient. Like, yeah, I think it's literally impatience. It's really funny. I spent 6 months in 2024 inside of a mastermind, and I learned more about who I didn't wanna be and how to not run my business than, like, how I should be doing things. But the thing is, I lost myself a bit in the process because let's say I hired I'm working with this coach, he's a millionaire coach making huge cash months, and it's funny because when I started working with her, it wasn't because of money, it was, like, her leadership and her identity and, like, around who you're becoming. But I think that in that, I got really distracted by shiny things because she evolved over the 6 months and kinda took us on that evolution, and then I started to become really impatient. I was like, "But I'm doing this and that," and I started to become obsessed with the when instead of the how. And so when I dropped out of that container, I actually dropped out early. I was like, "I'm complete. This is not for me. I'm moving on." I dropped out and I came back to this stillness. Again, it was the stress and the pressure of the 52 really came through for me there. And I came back to the stillness and I realized, Kayla, you just have to be patient. Like, just refine, plan your things, do your launches, look at how you can create a scalable business. If it takes 6 months, a year to get to it, the big goals you have, fuck it. Where are you going? What are you doing? You're not going anywhere. The time's going to pass anyways. And so it's really funny because the fifth gene key is in my moon. It's not in my gene keys. It's as a gate. It's in the moon. And it's like, that's what drives me is patience. and that timelessness. And so this gene key actually comes up a lot inside of the Edge Mastermind. And the women I can tell, I'm like, oh, you're being impatient. Let's have a little sit down with the fifth gene key, shall we? And we just laugh. We're like, oh, yeah, patience and timelessness and that connection to the sacral and G center, like it's part of the channel of rhythm. And it's like, well, finding your own rhythm. And if you find your own rhythm, that takes time. And so that's what I think. I think it's impatient. That was a very long-winded answer, but I think it needed to be said.
That was beautiful. No, and I think we get swept away in impatience because we are so bombarded by, you know, what everybody else is doing. Like you said, being in that container. It's like, well, look at what she's doing and why can't I be there? And why is she having all this success? And you're right. That just like throws you way off your game. And then it also might make you act in a way that's not congruent with your true self because you're like, well, she's doing that. Maybe I should do that. And maybe,
Yeah.
and it's just like not what we need to be doing at all. So yeah, I definitely think that whole patience thing. And I think about divine timing, like the things that have happened in my life, the cool things like, in business and stuff. Um, would I have been able to handle it a year ago or 6 months ago? Would I have had the capacity to even hold on to those things the way that I do now because I've done the work to be able to hold the success, right? And I think a lot of people think, "Oh, I really want success." It's like, yeah, of course, everybody wants the success, but can you actually like hold it?
Yeah.
Right? And not throw it away or feel really like anxious by it. And I'm a Pisces, so I'm a dreamer. Like I dream all these big dreams. And then when it like comes down to it, the resistance that I have is like the resistance is there for a good reason because I haven't actually built up any resources inside of me to hold the level of like, oh, let's do a speaking engagement with hundreds of people. Like, sure, that sounds nice, but realistically, no. That would
Yeah.
be so scary.
And it all again, it comes back to the how and the refinement piece. Like it's funny. So I'm currently in a new mastermind and I love it because like our values are so aligned. And I was on a call, it's two coaches running the mastermind, which is great. And they asked me, they're like, Kayla, if you had 100 or like 1,000 people sign up for your programs right now, like could you handle that? And I was like, nope. And because I could see the gaps. I'm like, well, I can't like I need more self-paced things. Like I couldn't have 100 people inside the Edge Mastermind. I need to create other offers that can be stepping stones into that. So I spent all of November and late October building funnels and capacity. Now it's like the early beginning of December and we're talking and I'm looking back and if they asked me that question, I'd say, yeah, I could easily have hundreds, if not thousands of people come into this because I've built it. And so it takes time. It wasn't like they told me that and 2 minutes later it was resolved. I mean, I worked really fast and I resolved it in like 6 weeks, but that's the thing is that it comes down to time, and it's because I was willing to do the how. I had to learn new skills during that time to create the funnels, and I'm looking at ads. Like, there's just a whole process that we need to embrace more.
Yeah, and I love that you're diving into your experience because consuming your content from the outside, right? And seeing, you're part of the summit and to hear you speak about the back end stuff that a lot of people probably don't, you know, think about. It's like, yeah, no, it is a step-by-step process and how to run that in a smooth way so that you're able to handle the capacity of clients and stuff. It's not just like you're sending out emails and like 1,000 people are going to join in on your stuff. It's
No.
like what you spoke about too is like building that trust. I feel like you're just really, really good at building that because of that humanity piece and just showing everybody, role modeling for everybody what it is you do. I love talking to you. Like it's just so
We have
real.
great combos. Yeah, I love our conversations, honestly. It's so fun.
It's so good. And I feel like I'm just always excited to share what you're up to, what you're teaching people inside your containers. So you need to tell us, how can people connect with you and how can people work with you?
Yes. Oh, I love this. Well, right now, I always have the Edge Mastermind going on. This is obviously like my highest proximity unless people go for private coaching, but this space is really special. Like, I think I've even surprised myself in the last 6 months that it's been going. Actually, it's been a little less than that now, but I just really love, like I said in this conversation, being able to hold space where people can come in and just be themselves. And it's like, you're not trying to look good and act like you're figuring it out and you're going to hit these massive goals in 6 months. Like, the foundation needs to be rock fucking solid. And I really preach that. And so that's like my big space right now. But I have a lot of other offers that are self-paced and lower ticket that I think are amazing. I'm obviously really passionate about helping people bring human design and gene keys in with strategy because I struggled for years. Again, the forcing energy, forcing, oh, I'm just going to manifest my business, but it was not working at all. And so if you head to my website, I have self-paced program, signature program by design is like what I've used to scale my business, which is great. And I have some really amazing freebies. The one that we have as part of this conversation is an ebook. I'm really excited about this ebook. So this ebook, you guys are going to lose your mind. It's 71 pages and you're like, what the fuck? Because I literally put everything inside of that ebook so that you can contemplate your entire pearl sequence. You've got all the lines, all the planets, like there's conversations and prompts around business. Like there's some really amazing tools in there. So I want to encourage everyone to download the ebook because you're going to get so much value and you'll be able to listen to this episode again and have a different perspective, which is great. And then, of course, you can find me on Instagram, KehlaG.com, my website. And then I also have my podcast, Living in Fierce Alignment. There's like over 400 episodes. I'm a very resourceful person. So that shadow of inadequacy had me build out a lot. So there's a lot there for you that you'll find in the show notes. So thank you for having me on and allowing me to share.
Yes. And hopefully by the time that this episode comes out, we will have the wait list for the summit because I know when people listen to this, they'll be like, yeah, gotta tune in because Kehla's dropping her wisdom for free at the summit. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jazz.
All right.
And that's it for today's episode. Please share it with anyone else who wants to learn more about human design or anyone who may be on their personal growth and spiritual development journey. You can DM me on Instagram to talk about what resonated with you, what you learned about yourself. I love hearing about human design in real life. So I really appreciate those conversations. And if you would like, you can leave a comment, a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. That support means the world. Thank you so much for listening. I know time is a valuable currency. Take care.